This is an amusing story and one with a valuable lesson. I love shooting in the American West, not only because it's photographically rewarding, but the whole process of driving, discovering, staying in one hotel after another, the bars, the restaurants, and not knowing what's going to happen. That's very liberating in a creative way. And in the West, one of my favorite places to visit is California's Death Valley. And it's on one of these visits that I had an unexpected and somewhat comical experience with another photographer. So, when you're in Death Valley, you've certainly reached the hallmark of isolation and wide open space in America. And that's why I love it. And in the valley itself, the sand dunes near Stovepipe Wells is a location that I've returned to for about 20 years. So, on one of my visits, after parking on the main road, I hiked about an hour and a half in and positioned myself on top of a dune which provided a vantage point where I could see a lot of opportunities in all directions. Now it was just a waiting game for the sun to sink, skim the light across the valley, and illuminate all the dunes very dramatically. You have to realize when you're there, in addition to the whole feeling of loneliness, the absence of sound is the other really amazing thing, which, for lack of another word, becomes almost deafening simply because you become hyper aware of every little activity. So now, after about 20 minutes of amusing myself, I catch my first glimpse of another person hiking across the dunes, making his way just as I had done. And as time goes on, I can see now that he has a backpack and a tripod. So here's a potential problem, because is he going to position himself somewhere in my line of fire, which would, of course, cause me to alter my whole plan of attack? So as I'm following his progress, it becomes obvious that he's heading in my direction, and unless he's totally blind, he certainly at this point sees me and my tripod atop the dune right in front of him. To my utter amazement, he eventually makes his way up my dune. I say it's my dune because I was there first. And you guessed it, he sets his tripod up not 10 feet away from me. Now, anybody who knows me personally knows that when I'm talking, I like to sometimes exaggerate a fact just to emphasize a point. Like if I say it must have been 1,000,000 degrees out, it wasn't really 1,000,000 degrees out. That would be way too hot. But this guy is under 10 feet away from me in an environment that's so vast and so wide open that 1,000 people could be hiding and you'd never be able to find them. So, being the good-natured fellow I am, I give him a genuine hello, and it's then that I realize English is not his language of choice. So this prompts me to have a molecule of understanding, because perhaps, he's from another country and he doesn't want to break any park rules or upset the apple cart. And honestly, I know from past experience, Death Valley, and like all of our national parks, is super popular with our European neighbors. I mean, in one sense, I have to admire this guy for picking the perfect spot to shoot from, even though I'm the one who did the legwork. He's certainly not going to be getting an award for creativity. Here's the point I want you to grasp. The whole reason you're a photographer, either professional or serious amateur, is because you're supposed to be a unique individual. If you wanted to be a sheep, you'd be working at something that everybody else can or is doing. The whole reason to get into this profession is to demonstrate that you're a free thinker, someone whose mind is bubbling over with one interesting thought after another. In my travels, I've seen this scenario repeated time and time again, no matter where I'm shooting. Dozens of wannabe photographers all clustered together, lenses pointed in the same direction, all with their tripods at the same height. I swear to God, when one starts clicking, it's as if they were all connected to the same cable release. The big picture problem here is that they have all chosen the easy way out. They've looked at some other photographer's work and have come to the conclusion that the path to success is accomplished by traveling to a handful of locations and duplicating the same image from the same position. Just think about that for a minute. Imagine if you were a fine art painter and you went through the trouble of finding a model that looked exactly like the Mona Lisa. Then you flew her to Italy and you put her in a setting of rolling hills and you duplicated every detail of the original artwork. Then you took your painting to a museum and tried to get them to hang your work. Do you think they'd be impressed, or do you think they'd think you were an idiot? Right out of the starting gate, photographers do themselves a disservice by not putting their craft at the same level as a fine art painter. And that's because the finished product is so much easier and quicker to obtain. Photographers often skip the entire first step of creativity, which is coming up with an original idea. Don't misinterpret what I'm saying here. You're allowed to go to Death Valley, even though me and 1,000 other photographers have already done so. Just do yourself a huge favor. Find your own sand dune.